Hi, I'm Justin, and I'm back trying to learn how to animate from zero experience. And in this part, I'm finally animating the big one, a walking animation. This is the first real time I'll be attempting to animate an actual person doing a full body movement, and even with all the previous practice, saying I'm ready and confident in my skill to do this would be a lie. But that's what this whole learning process and video series is about. Like the previous videos, I did do my research and took notes since that really helps me with learning and retaining information. I'll mention some of the more important things I learned in my research and resources you can check out too as I work through these animations. I first started with the stickman test. I wanted to get the basic poses down and also see the difference in animating a Japanese style walk animation versus a Western style walk animation. Though they are both based on a 24 frame full walk cycle, meaning the full 2 steps will only take 24 frames or exactly 1 second, and they will look fairly similar, the key poses are very different. Dongchang's video, Japanese versus Western walk cycles, does a good job at explaining the differences between the two. Basically, the Japanese walk cycle will always use the same 4 key poses in its animation, and it will usually be animated on 3s, meaning one drawing/pose will last 3 frames in a 24 frame per second animation. The key poses are always the same: the contact pose, the down pose, the pass pose, and the up pose. These will then repeat with the opposite foot and you will have a full walk cycle. On the other hand, the Western style animation will have more interpretation to its key poses as it really only uses the contact pose and passing pose. They are also usually animated on 2s, meaning more drawings and frames have to be filled between its contact pose and passing pose instead of a single up or down pose. Though this may lead to a smoother animation, I find making the in-betweens for this to be less consistent and they required a lot more playing around with. Dongchang's video also mentions how Western style animations will often slow or speed up their walk cycles so that they can use the key poses of a Japanese walk cycle while still animating on 2s. After this test and the tips I learned, I decided to do my actual walk animations based off the Japanese style walk animation. Since I already did the stickman test, I decided to use it as a base to make a more proportional and cleaner stickman guide. From there, I did some really rough blocking out to build out a full figure on top of that. This is where I could finally see the walk animation come together, and I was pretty excited. Since everything was a bit more blocked out, it was a lot easier to see how off my stickman base was and what I needed to fix. One of the biggest things I realized here was to make sure my contact pose was not too extreme. Since the down pose is supposed to be more pushed out and extended than the contact pose with the arms and the legs, they can't be too similar, which my poses were very similar. In particular, my contact pose was pushed out way too wide. This made it look like the arms didn't swing as much during the walk. This really goes for all the poses and making sure they're all unique and differentiate from each other enough to make the movement look fluid. Once I was happy with my base poses, I actually just copied and pasted them after each other and used itself as a base to create my other half of my walk cycle with the other foot and hand in the opposite positions. I really just traced over these same poses but changed some lines to make it look like the opposite foot and hand were in different positions. I also tried to add some lines to the back and front of the torso to show it twisting a bit during the walk and to make it feel a bit more organic. Finally, I touched up the line work and added some basic shading to the further arm and leg to really show their positions. Now, I think the final product for this was pretty decent for my first try, but I wish I tried to focus a bit more on the arcs and timings of the different parts of the body. Modern Day James does a good job at mentioning the importance of arcs and timing in a walk animation in his video, and I'll touch on that a little bit more later. And that's a final side profile walk animation. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out for my first full body movement animation, but since it's such a big milestone, I really wanted to push myself and study it a bit more. Now you may notice my canvas was divided into 3 sections, and I've only filled 1. In the Modern Day James video I already mentioned, he animated a walk cycle in a front view and 3/4 view as well. I'm also going to attempt to animate a front and 3/4 view animation too, since I think it'll be a fun challenge and really help me get comfortable animating a full body movement in different ways. I decided to start with a front view since I think it'll also help me with the 3/4 view when I get to it. Since the arms and legs move forward and backward toward the camera, they lose their dimensionality until you can really block it out and add perspective. So making a stickman guide for this wouldn't really work and you wouldn't really be able to see the lines moving back and forward in space. This led me to go straight into blocking out the figure walking so I could add the foreshortening on the limbs and see them moving back and forth through space. I added a grid to my canvas to make sure the new figure was proportional to the one I already made, since that was my only point of reference for this angle. The biggest thing I feel I faced here was making sure all the new figures lined up with the old ones. Though my figures didn't have much definition and details, so there was room to play with in the proportions, making the torso and head bobbing up and down during the movement was one thing I found myself really paying attention to the most. The foreshortening of the limbs back and forward in space relative to the camera was also a bit of a challenge to make look right, but that's a whole different subject outside of animating, I think. Once again, I did just copy and paste the poses and then flip them to make the other half of the walk. I didn't realize how off-centered my poses were, but this did give me an idea. Modern day James mentions how in a 3/4 view, you would see the shoulders and hips move relative to what side of the body is stepping forward. I also wanted to try this on a smaller scale to the walk cycle to see if I could make it look more organic. I didn't go full out with it, but when I was fixing my off-center sketches, I tried to make sure at least the shoulders showed some sort of dynamic movement when the arms would swing. I decided to move the front view animation to the right side, which would give me a pretty decent reference between the side and front view animations for when I did my 3/4 walk animation. After that, it was just cleaning up the lines again and adding a bit of shading to accentuate what body parts were closer or further to the camera. I think it turned out pretty decent considering there wasn't much research for the front-facing animation other than the couple of minutes in modern day James' video, so I had to figure out most of it myself. And finally, this leaves one more section remaining for, in my opinion, the most difficult one, the final 3/4 view walk cycle. Once again, there really wasn't much research I did on this, and the only real stuff I saw on this was the few things that were mentioned in the modern day James video, so once again, I was somewhat on my own. I originally thought that the stickman wouldn't work here since it wouldn't show enough depth when different parts of the bodies overlapped each other, but I added where the shoulders and hips were, and that really helped me visualize the overlap on the figure. The proportions weren't perfect, but having two references on each side of it really helped me fix it up when it came to blocking it out. Blocking out the 3/4 view was definitely the most difficult of the three since it was a lot more dynamic than the last two angles. Again, I had trouble with the contact and not making it too extreme to where it ended up looking like the down pose, but I went back and fixed that eventually. Like the front view, I wanted to try and make the shoulders look like they were swaying forward and backward with the movement of the arms. It didn't turn out great, but I think I did okay with it. Also, with the shoulders moving, I tried to make the chest more or less visible to the camera depending on what arm was swinging forward and the angle of the torso. I don't think I did a good job at filming this, but another thing that I struggled with on all the animations, but particularly this one, was making the hand positions look smooth between the poses. Modern Name James mentioned this a bit with his point about arcs and timing on different parts of the body. I wish I would have paid more attention to this since I think it would have saved me some time going back and fixing my poses. Then again, I think it would have still been difficult to use arcs since the body moves up and down as it steps and might mess up the curvature of the arc if I used it as a guide, but that's probably just me overthinking it as a beginner and complicating it in my head. Maybe in my next practice, I'll try to pay more attention to it. I tried my best to find an example in my footage, but you can kind of see how the hand doesn't smoothly move back and forth consistently. It's kind of choppy and gets stuck in certain positions, or certain positions are too similar to each other, so it looks like it stays in the same place. Finally, it was cleaning up the line work and adding a bit of shading to give the animation a bit more depth, and these animations were finally done. I finally animated not just one walk animation, but 3. I feel like this is a really big milestone in my animation journey since I got a lot more practice than I expected on animating a person doing a full body movement, and I learned a lot more than I expected to. So what about learning to animate part 5? I feel at this point I'm kind of at a standstill as far as new things to make content for. As far as my research, a walking animation was one of the most advanced beginner exercises that actually had a reason for being a beginner exercise and had multiple new fundamentals to learn and practice in it. Obviously, I could make more videos based off of every animation I make, but there really won't be much new information I can learn from them or present if I do something like drawing a hand doing a different movement or a walk cycle in a different perspective. For example, I could make a video about doing a running animation, but it would be pretty similar to this, and other than maybe more extreme arcs and angles and exaggeration in a pose, I feel like there wouldn't be much new stuff to present compared to this video or something else I've already done before. I want my content in this series to present new things I learn and exciting things to watch instead of just showing me practice the same things over and over again. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm going to stop making these animation videos. I think it'll just be a little bit longer until the next one comes out with more new animations that I practice. Most of the animation exercise reels I see are usually people just practicing what they'd like. A great example of this is someone I personally follow for inspiration on Instagram that goes by, I hope I'm saying this right, Goob4430, where they seem to just post all the practice that they do. I feel I'm in a similar position here where in order for me to progress in my animation journey, I really just have to animate the things I want to. If I do come up with new things that I learn, or new information, or things that I think are crucial to learning animation, I will for sure make videos about it and try to make content about it, but I feel the information that I would learn in these animations would be much smaller and more niche compared to what these videos are. The only possible thing I could think of for the next step in animating is animating expressions, which I think I should get a bit more better at drawing faces and anatomy first, which may be a video coming up later. But anyway, outside of the learning part of animation, I do have a couple more fun animation related ideas for videos, as well as some other ideas involving art stuff, so stay tuned for that if you enjoy this content. I forgot to mention this in my last video, but if you have any tips, advice, or recommendations for animating and/or video/content creation, please let me know down in the comments below. Any help is much appreciated and taken into mind. Thank you for watching this far and listening to me ramble. If you like this video and want to see more content like it, and hopefully more art related content, like, comment, and subscribe down below. It really does mean a lot. If you like this video and want to see other content now, you can check me out on my other socials where I post other stuff like drawings and things that I make. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.